What's up, everybody, and welcome to a brand new episode of the 5280 Podcast. I am your host, Mundungus Creevy, alongside my co-hosts, as always, Glenn Hauser and Gage Madrid. And obviously, you notice that Cameron Parker's not here.
Absolute booty cheeks.
He decided to skip out. I'm kidding.
Yeah. Come on, Cam. Stop being absolute booty cheeks, Cam.
Yeah, cut it out.
It sounds like another C. Parker is letting us down.
So, right?
Yeah. So
might as well just skip right into that. I mean, that's literally the only Broncos news like that we can talk about. There's nothing. Christian Parker leaves the Broncos to go be a pass game coordinator with the Eagles. And like most people are thinking, oh, well, he's joining Fangio. Not really, because he's on the offensive side of the ball.
Well, the offensive or defensive passing game coordinator?
It just says passing game coordinator. I'm assuming
there are defensive passing game coordinators. Like they are in charge of like the secondary and stuff like that. And given Christian Parker's acumen in the secondary, he's probably going to have some influence on the offensive side of the ball. But this is most likely a defensive position, I'd imagine. I had read initially on Twitter that it was a DB's coach. He was taking the same position in Philadelphia that he was taking in Denver. So I wasn't sure what position that was. So you saying that kind of caught me a little bit off guard, actually.
Okay, so Mike Kliss said Vic Fangio's defensive staff is what he's joining. So it has to be pass game coordinator defense.
Mm-hmm. Okay. Yeah, so, and he worked with Fangio in 2021. He was the DB's coach here. So Fangio had made that hire, and he survived through two other staffs after that. So clearly Christian Parker has put together a strong acumen in Denver. He was a key contributor in developing Pat Surtain, a key contributor in developing PJ Locke into a starter, Jaquan McMillan into a starter. I really feel like us losing Christian Parker is going to be a really, really big blow to this secondary because of all the growth and development that they've shown. I mean, we started last year, our secondary was in complete shambles, man, especially after Justin Simmons went down with injuries. We had Kareem Jackson and Delarian Turner-Yell starting back there at safety. We had Essane Bassie at nickel, who ended up getting cut after his dismal performance against Miami and Chicago as well. It was halfway through the Chicago game, I believe, that they benched Essane Bassie for Jaquan McMillan. And then obviously we had the disaster with Damari Mathis, and then things started to stabilize over time in that secondary. And Christian Parker had a big hand in that with saying, hey man, if you were to play Jaquan McMillan, if you were to play PJ Locke, these are young guys who can really contribute. So Vance Joseph gave a lot of credit to Christian Parker for the growth that the secondary saw over the season. And even Sean Payton said that Christian Parker is a rising star. And that's part of the reason why he did let him go, according to Mike Kliss. Mike Kliss says that the Broncos could have blocked this if they wanted to, but apparently Parker's going to have a more extended opportunity in Philadelphia under Fangio than he would here in Denver. So that is why Christian Parker decided to go there. Plus, he's from New Jersey, just outside of Philly, so it makes a lot of sense. Go back home, go back with Fangio. It makes a lot of sense.
And another thing that he also was involved in is Kareem Jackson with his suspension, so missing an extended period of time, and Caden Stearns going out for the season and then having to make up for that too. So, I mean, kudos to him. It's to me, it's a big loss. I know Gage agrees. You know, it's and he had a lot of respect from the players as well. So we'll see what happens. Do you have any insight, Gage, on like who would step in for the secondary for the Broncos?
At this time, no, I don't. Let me look at their coaching staff list and see if there's maybe like a defensive assistant who could be waiting in the rings.
Or an ex-Saint coach that wants to move over with with Peyton.
You know, that also is very possible.
Well, we know it won't be Darren Sharper.
Oh, oh God.
Mike Vrabel's still out there.
Steve Belichick. Steve Belichick went to the Washington Huskies.
Yeah, that guy creeps me out.
He is so weird.
Yeah. Oh,
so weird.
Creepy. Just
don't mind me just eating my string cheese.
There are several jokes I could make right now that aren't exactly appropriate for this podcast, so I'm going to refrain. But in terms of somebody,
When did we start having standards?
After Brandon Perna and Derek Wolfe, everything is appropriate. It's fine.
I mean, this might even be a little more. What's up, John? How you doing, brother? But maybe I'm thinking like there's a couple of defensive quality control coaches that are waiting in the wings, Addison Lynch and Isaac Shoemaker. And then also senior defensive assistant Joe Vitt has some acumen with defensive backs, and he was actually the Saints interim head coach during Bountygate. So he's somebody who kind of has a name for himself in the NFL. So if the Broncos were to go in-house to replace Christian Parker, those are probably the guys I would keep an eye on. Yeah, John, that was definitely a big blow for this Broncos secondary. We talked about that in the opener, how he really helped contribute to the development of players such as P.J. Locke, Jaquan McMillan, and obviously Pat Surtain. So, yeah, stings.
All right, well, that's our show. That's all the Broncos news we got. Thank you. No, but there are some other things potentially AFC West related. I did want to start off with the Commanders. They were the last team to hire a coach. They ended up hiring Dan Quinn, and it sounds like Dan Quinn is not going to keep Eric Bieniemy on staff. So I wonder if he makes his way back with Andy Reid and the Chiefs next year. Well,
the person he hired is an interesting hire as far as their draft positioning goes. You know,
Pat Shurmur.
I don't think he would influence anyone to come, but Kingsbury is going to be the offensive coordinator, and he actually worked with USC this year, spent an extended period of time with Caleb Williams, and kind of lends some sort of juice to. I don't think there's much credibility about it, but the rumors about how Caleb Williams has refused to go to the Bears. I don't think there's anything to that, but the point being is. So now it adds a little bit more to that, intrigue is there going to be a reuniting of Caleb Williams and his QB mentor from USC in Washington? And he's from that area as well. I mean, so it's very interesting.
Shefty put out a tweet that said, connect the dots. I think that's very noteworthy. The Commanders are within striking distance to move up, be it as much as they're trying to deny it now. There has been some rumors out there about Caleb Williams, his brass not wanting him to go to the Bears, in particular his father. So maybe there is some credence to that, and maybe Caleb will indeed pull an Eli Manning and go, no, I'm not going to play for the Chicago Bears. And going and reuniting with Cliff Kingsbury in an offensive scheme that Caleb Williams has thrived in for the last several years, his entire college career, both at Oklahoma and at USC. This would make a whole lot of sense. And again, him being from that area, there's so many ties that bind Caleb Williams to the Washington Commanders right now. And there's been some interesting rumblings about the top quarterbacks in the draft and how potentially Jaden Daniels could go above Drake May. So let's say maybe there's a scenario where the Commanders trade up to number 1, and then the Bears, who are sitting at 2, maybe they feel confident in Justin Fields, and then they trade down, and somebody comes up for a Jaden Daniels. Hint, hint, Broncos, but I don't think they actually have the capital to do that. But if they did, that'd be something I would definitely be pining for. But that's a scenario that I would definitely keep an eye on, is Caleb Williams potentially going to the Washington Commanders. So, and yes, he, as we've said, he is indeed from Washington, D.C. Fun fact, Bears have never had a 4,000-yard passer in their franchise history. Yeah, and there's a lot of reasoning why a young player wouldn't want to go to the Chicago Bears. We just saw them basically ruin Justin Fields' early development in his career, and I could strongly see why Caleb Williams would be worried the same thing could happen to him.
I mean, I definitely think this leads or makes more sense if Caleb Williams is actually not wanting to go to Chicago, for Chicago to sit and try to trade down to the second pick for the Commanders to move up. I mean, it almost makes sense at this point that the Commanders need to get above Chicago. Because even if you don't need a quarterback and Caleb Williams doesn't want to go to you, you almost have to draft him at this point.
I mean, then you would do basically like an Eli Manning, Phillip Rivers type trade then maybe.
Right.
is you draft him and then trade that. I could see that. I mean, it was basically that's the same thing. I could see it.
So what do you think it would take to move up from 2 to 1? That can't be very significant, could it?
I would think that it would probably involve at least one first-round pick and maybe a second-round pick. I don't think it would be anything too huge, but we do remember when the Chicago Bears traded up one spot, ironically enough, back in 2017 to get Mitch Trubisky. So I believe it was something to the effect of like a first and a third-round pick. I think nowadays it would be worth a little bit more now that we've seen more higher magnitude trades since that point. So if I had to just guess, it would be like a first and a second round pick.
I mean, you can understand why they picked Mitch. There were no other good quarterbacks in that draft that year.
No, none.
No.
Nobody of significance.
No.
All right. So moving on to the Raiders, who are doing Raider things. They are expected to hire former Bears offensive coordinator Luke Getsy. So now we have a Telesco and Getsy pairing with a rookie head coach. So this is going to be great. Like I'm loving the staff they're putting together over there.
It is definitely a jumbled mess. Let's just put it that way. Luke Getsy, I think, did some good things in Chicago, especially last year, but I don't think that he's an adequate offensive coordinator in the NFL. Pairing that with the rookie head coach in Antonio, well, I don't necessarily classify Antonio Pierce as a rookie head coach because he got that experience last year, but with, let's just say, a first-time head coach in Antonio Pierce, still trying to go through the motions and go through the ropes, I think this has potential to be a disaster. I'm curious to see how Tom Telesco approaches the whole roster building aspect of this, but I think the entirety of the AFC West is cackling like hyenas right now, especially the Chargers because of freaking Tom Telesco.
It's so funny.
It is.
I'm sorry.
I love when rivals self-destruct.
Right?
Okay, so Mayock back to assist in the draft as well.
Ooh, that'd be good. That'd be good. Obviously, the biggest thing that happened this last weekend, we got Super Bowl this coming weekend. The last weekend was the Senior Bowl, and we had a lot of quarterbacks there that have been tied to the Denver Broncos. You had J.J. McCarthy, you had Michael Penix, you had Bo Nix, you had Pratt, you had Spencer Rattler, like all these quarterbacks. And Gage, I know that you've been paying a lot of attention to the Senior Bowl. You went back and watched some film on it, watched the quarterbacks on it. So I kind of wanted to get your take on quarterbacks that stood out, other players that stood out, and if you've changed your mind any on who could potentially be a good fit for the Broncos. Maybe.
So starting off with the quarterback position, which is definitely the position I've paid the most attention to. I don't know if my internet's cutting out or if it's on the other end because, it's me. Okay.
Yeah.
All right. Hold on one second. I might have to exit for 1 second. Absolute booty cheeks.
I love that I have that in there.
It's so good. It's so good.
Okay, so while we wait,
so I got to tout one of my guys, right, for the Senior Bowl, and he actually has gotten a lot of love on the national level. But as a University of New Hampshire alum, Dylan Laube, running back, really an all-purpose back, great returner, incredible blocker. In the first game this year, he had 295 yards receiving as a running back. I mean, the guy is an absolute stud. He is one of my dream picks for the Denver Broncos. I'm talking about Dylan Laube, great Gage. I absolutely love this guy. He's so elusive, electrifying in person to see. And again, he was getting a lot of kudos. And even on the insiders, that was Mike Garofalo's player of the week, actually, at the Senior Bowl, which I thought was pretty exciting. So Fingers crossed, man. I would love for the Broncos to maybe spend a 4th-round pick on him, because I think this could be an all-purpose draft. Listen, Jay Brian, we're not pulling up your comment about against who. Okay, we're not talking about who he got 295 yards receiving. It happened.
Stop it. I mean, I can totally see why you're a big fan of Laubes being from that general area, but I absolutely agree with you. I think he could be a really big impact player for this Denver Broncos team. The Broncos, I feel like, are going to need to spend a pick on a running back this draft. Javonte Williams, I felt like there were some signs of concern last year, him coming off of that injury and him just not really running well, not seeing the field well at times. Samaje Perine, I felt like, was grotesquely underutilized. I felt like we could have seen a lot more Samaje Perine last year. So I think the Broncos might want to get a little bit younger at that position. And I'm somebody who is of the philosophy that you bring in a running back almost every single year until you find one. So Dylan Laube definitely stood out at the Senior Bowl, could be a guy who fits that mold. As far as quarterbacks are concerned, because that's obviously the biggest position of question here in Denver, I feel like not many of the first-round quarterbacks did a whole lot to raise their stock at the Senior Bowl. I feel like guys like Michael Penix Jr. and Bo Nix especially struggled during those practices. I feel like they weren't making really good decisions. They weren't seeing the field well. They were sailing passes. They were throwing passes in the dirt. Like, it just was concerning seeing kind of the lack of growth and progression over the 3-day practice periods for the Senior Bowl. So that's one thing that I am very concerned about. I do feel like a couple of the maybe day 2, day 3 quarterbacks did rise their stock a little bit, talking about Spencer Rattler as well as Michael Pratt, somebody we've talked about quite a bit on this channel, the quarterback out of Tulane. So those are some guys who definitely may have risen their stock from like a 4th-round quarterback to a 3rd-round quarterback, or maybe in the case of someone like Spencer Rattler, maybe to the late 2nd round. I think that he could be somebody who could really almost be like a Jalen Hurts type player, where he's a 2nd-round flyer that could develop into a high-end player in the NFL. I still feel like Spencer Rattler isn't going to go in the 1st round or anything like that, but overall, I think that Broncos country walked away a little bit disappointed with what they saw from the top quarterbacks in the Senior Bowl, because as much as I want the Denver Broncos to trade up and get Jayden Daniels, at this point in time, I just don't think it's realistic. I think quarterback is going to go 1, 2, 3 in the draft. And I think that Jayden Daniels might even be number 2 in that sequence. Like, I think there are teams out there that really, really like Jayden Daniels more than Drake May. And if the Commanders were to trade up to number 1 to get Caleb, and the Bears are sitting there at 2, maybe they go with somebody like Jayden Daniels, who's very similar to Justin Fields in a lot of ways, but I feel like he has a better arm than Justin Fields does and is more consistent with overall accuracy than Justin Fields. So maybe the Bears just kind of want to get the next model up, if you will, from Justin Fields in Jayden Daniels, and you still acquire a king's ransom of picks, and then you're going to get another pick on top of that for Justin Fields. So that's something that I could absolutely see. But for the Denver Broncos, the top quarterbacks in the Senior Bowl definitely did not do enough to give us a lot of optimism heading into 2024, because if we don't get one of the top 3 guys, I'm worried that it's going to be somebody on the more mediocre side, like a Bo Nix, like a Michael Penix Jr., who's really kind of my least intriguing option. JJ McCarthy, because of his age, would probably be the most intriguing out of those 3 to me.
I couldn't believe how bad the game was in itself. I mean, Sam Hartman, if anyone picks him, like, I can't imagine he's going to get drafted. He was Denver's so embarrassingly bad. And at one point, the game was stopped by the mascots on the field. I don't know if you remember this part, but for some reason, they were not exiting the field in a timely fashion. And so there was some reference to it being, that they were being shuffled off. And Daniel Jeremiah said, "Why don't we put them in the end zone so they'll be safe?" Like, that's how bad the game was. Yeah, that was pretty good though.
Mm-hmm.
Yes. And I did watch I did see a PFF mock draft after the Senior Bowl, and they do have the 3 quarterbacks going top 3: Caleb Williams, Drake May, Jayden Daniels, and then the Broncos will be taking Bo Nix, Raiders with Michael Penix. Please take Michael Penix.
I definitely like the Raiders to take Michael Penix. That would be an ideal scenario for me.
Sam Hartman, they can take him too if they want.
Hey man,
First round pick.
That'd be great. Oh God, imagine using if the Raiders were to use a 5th round pick on Sam Hartman, I would laugh. I genuinely would. Like, he was embarrassingly terrible in that Senior Bowl. I think he completed like 2 or 3 passes, something like that. It was just not good. But as far as Bo Nix to the Denver Broncos, listen, I wouldn't hate it. I do feel like he fits well as far as what Sean Payton likes to do. And I'm going to take a little page out of my man Cecil Lammy's book here. He says that the Senior Bowl accounts for about 10% of a player's overall draft grade. So I'm not going to use the Senior Bowl as like an end-all be-all for some of these quarterbacks. I do still like Bo Nix quite a bit and think that if the Broncos were to go quarterback at 12, either him or JJ McCarthy would be the most intriguing players there. But I still am a little concerned with what I saw, seeing these quarterbacks in their first pro style action, if you will.
I really, even with what, some of the lackluster performance, I just cannot see the Broncos passing on a quarterback in the first round just from the standpoint of like just sheer desperation. It's going to be one of the most interesting drafts to watch in my lifetime, which means definitely in your guys' lifetime too. But anyway, it's I just can't imagine them passing on a quarterback in the first round, even if they scoop back a few spots to maybe get that second round pick, but still picking somebody in the teens. I don't know. Mike, do you think they select a QB in the first round, even if it's one of the second tier guys, or what do you think's going to happen?
I do. I think they're going to have to, because I think there's going to be 5 or 6 that go in the first round. And once you get past that, I don't know if you have a potential starter like later in the rounds. And we don't have a second round pick, so you'd have to wait till the third. But like, it seems like everything is coming for the Broncos, at least, is coming down to Bo Nix and JJ McCarthy, right? Like, Bo Nix, I guess, is rated as the most accurate passer, but JJ McCarthy has the highest potential ceiling. But I think that, like, if the Broncos draft Bo Nix, with his age, you almost have to start him his first year just to get your money's worth out of him, I guess is the way to say it. But if you go JJ McCarthy, you almost have to have a bridge quarterback for a year to let McCarthy learn and then start him. So that kind of puts you in 2 weird spots.
I agree. I think that with McCarthy, you could start him potentially like week 8 of his rookie year, but week 1, I don't know about that. It all would come down to, in that scenario, how much does Sean Payton trust Jarrett Stidham as his week 1 starter? I think that he does like Jarrett Stidham. I think that could be a plausible scenario. Otherwise, I think we're looking at like a Jameis Winston prototype. I really do. He had success in this Sean Payton offense. He worked in this offense under Pete Carmichael for the last couple of years, even after Sean Payton was out of New Orleans. I think that if there is a quarterback that's going to come through the free agent pipeline, Jameis Winston just makes too much sense on several different fronts. So if we're going to go with somebody like a JJ McCarthy, I would have a Jameis Winston ahead of him. But just like you said, with Bo Nix, with his age, you can't afford to do that, because by the time he'd be starting, he'd be what, 25, 26? That's not plausible for the Denver Broncos. When it comes to JJ McCarthy, by the time he hits 25, 26, he could be already thinking about his second contract because of how young he is. So I don't know, man. I think that McCarthy is the most intriguing just because of his age alone. But for what Sean Payton wants to do, I think Bo Nix fits that mold, if that makes any sense.
Well, and I mean, there have things. Go ahead, Glenn.
I was going to say there have to be quarterbacks that are 3 years into their careers in the NFL that have less quality starts than a Bo Nix. Like he has more experience and more starts than any quarterback in NCAA history. His accuracy was again a record of about 78%. So he's one of those guys that if you want somebody to fast track into a starting situation, I mean, he's the guy you pick. You know, Gage, how far back could you trade and still get either a Bo or a JJ?
I don't know, because I feel like there are other teams out there that might be a little bit more desperate for a quarterback. You know, maybe a Pittsburgh Steelers type team who can't move forward with Kenny Pickett any longer, even though they said they're going to bring him back. If they are in position to get a first-round quarterback, I don't know if they could pass up that opportunity. I'm just going to pull up the NFL draft order just to refresh.
I've got it right here.
Okay,
so
cool. I got it.
I'm kind of thinking like the Seahawks could potentially take one. I mean, if you're Seattle at 16 and you have a Bo Nix or JJ McCarthy or Michael Penix, you almost have to, because right now you're operating with Geno Smith and Drew Lock, and I think both are free agents, aren't they?
Drew is. Geno's under contract. They extended him. Yeah, I think New Orleans, because I don't know how much of a future Derek Carr is going to have there. Yeah, definitely Seattle. Maybe the Rams. Maybe the Rams, if they're thinking Matthew Stafford might be in the twilight years of his career. But outside of that, I think that you could maybe comfortably trade, I don't know, maybe to like 15 with Indianapolis. I don't know why Indianapolis would want to come up. Maybe for like a Brock Bowers, if he falls, that could actually be a big option, because they need a tight end.
PFF has Brock Bowers going 5th to the Chargers.
Oh, wow.
So they'd have to go. Well, and they got – so the card – okay, so obviously we did Caleb Williams, Drake May, Jaden Daniels, top 3. 4 is Marvin Harrison. And I'm not a big PFF fan when it comes to, like, grading players. But mock drafts, I like PFF. Chargers with Bowers. Giants take Adunze. Adunze? Is that right?
Yeah, Rome Odunze.
Okay, Adunze. And then Titans take tackle with Joe Alt. So Falcons take an edge, Jared Verse. Bears taking a wide receiver to pair with Caleb Williams, Malik Neighbors. So I mean, it's all defense and offensive line until you get to Denver at 12.
Yeah. So if that is how that pans out, then Bo Nix will likely be there. JJ McCarthy will be there. I mean, I don't know, man. I think that if you have that opportunity, you have to take it. Who's more desperate than a team rolling out Jarrett Stidham? I mean, I have to agree with that. I don't think Jarrett Stidham is a viable starting option. We saw that in those 2 games. I saw it with my own eyes in training camp every single day. Jarrett Stidham is not a viable starting quarterback in the NFL. The Broncos cannot roll with that. If they bring in a Jameis Winston, then maybe they can defer on quarterback until 2025. But even then, the question is, will the Denver Broncos be bad enough to be in striking distance for a quarterback? That's not a guarantee. They are in striking distance right here, right now. And just like I said in the last podcast, the Broncos cannot afford to piss around with this any longer. They have tried everything else but this. We have to make the move now.
And one of the things that Benjamin Albright was talking about, and Gage, we talked about it for the last 2 podcasts, about potentially moving up into the top 5 to get one of those quarterbacks. But Benjamin Albright was mentioning, like, you have to have collateral to move up into the draft. Denver doesn't really have any. Like, do they even have the ammo to move up? I mean, we might have to sit at 12 and just wait.
You know, I do think that they can acquire the ammo, because I talked about this in the last podcast. The Texans traded up to number 3 from number 12 with the Arizona Cardinals, and it was with fairly low levels of compensation. So I think maybe to get up to a number 4, but that's only if Jaden Daniels or maybe Drake May were to slide out of the top 3. At this point in time, it doesn't look like that's going to happen. So I don't see a scenario for the Broncos where it would be worth trading up unless Jaden Daniels were sitting there at number 4 and say New England were to go with Marvin Harrison. But New England's basically said they're taking a quarterback without saying they're taking a quarterback. They said that they're taking the best player available at the most important position. So we can all figure out
they do need wide receiver though too.
They do, and that's why I feel like Marvin Harrison could be an option, but they've basically already come out and said, we're taking the best player available at the most important position, and we all know that's quarterback.
Yeah.
And the follow-up to that line, actually, that Mayo said was read between the lines. So
y'all think we can get a third for Cortland Sutton or Jerry Jeudy? I should hope so.
Cortland, yeah. I don't think you can get a third for Jerry Jeudy. I think you're probably going to get like a fourth, fifth for Jerry Jeudy.
So all of this kind of goes back to a topic we've talked about before, but we're all going under the assumption that the Bears pick first and take Caleb Williams. Mm-hmm. So at that point, that leaves Justin Fields kind of up in the air. Do we think Justin Fields is a good fit for the Broncos? And if not, what team is a better fit for Justin Fields at this point?
Probably Atlanta Falcons. He's from Atlanta. I think that would make a lot of sense. I don't know how much Justin Fields would fit into what Sean Payton's trying to do on offense. He just moved on from an erratic quarterback who depends on his legs and depends on his headhunter mentality, can't really operate in structure very well. I think Sean Payton's looking for a quarterback who can either A, operate in structure, or B, if you aren't exactly a quarterback who operates in structure like a Jaden Daniels, you can use your legs to your advantage, even more so than a guy like Justin Fields. I think you can maybe say like Justin Fields would be almost like a diet Jaden Daniels, but I don't think Sean Payton would be willing to give up draft capital to get that caliber of a player.
Well, and my question was, you look at the Saints and what Sean Payton did with Taysom Hill, and you compare Taysom Hill to Justin Fields. Would that potentially be a thing that Payton would want to do with Justin Fields on the Broncos?
Maybe. I just don't necessarily feel like Justin Fields exactly fits what Sean Payton wants and what the price would be to get him. I think it's going to cost a second-round pick to get Justin Fields, and obviously the Broncos don't have a second-round pick right now. So I just think that there are other teams out there that are more feasible for Justin Fields, such as the Atlanta Falcons. I think that's kind of the most likely team that might go after him if they want to add another piece to really complete that team and then defer on quarterback or see if Justin Fields can be salvaged. So I don't know, man. I just don't think Justin Fields to Denver makes a whole lot of sense.
Now, Gage, you had brought up before in previous weeks the kid from Tulane. Glenn, you did too. What do you think? It's Pratt, right? What do you think about Michael Pratt? Yep. Michael Pratt? Matthew Pratt? Mark Pratt?
Mike Pratt.
Jadavius Pratt, whatever his name is. I don't know.
I think he actually was kind of the most consistent quarterback throughout the Senior Bowl practices. I feel like he was making good decisions. He was accurate. He was making high-level NFL caliber throws. I don't think that he's going to be a first-round quarterback or maybe even a second-round quarterback, but I certainly think he could go like high in the third round, maybe an early third-round pick. So, yeah, man, Michael Pratt actually really rose his stock up in the Senior Bowl. I don't even know if he'll be there when what was this?
But the dude clocked a 76 mile per hour last week. I was shocked. He threw a ball that hard?
Jeez. That's insane. But yeah, man, I think Michael Pratt might not even be there when the Broncos pick in the third round. So they may even have to trade up to get him if they're interested. But I think he did do a really good job of raising his stock during the Senior Bowl week. He was one of the most consistent quarterbacks out there.
And I think he's one of those guys that we really had an interest in seeing. You know, we've seen a lot of Bo Nix over the years, but Michael Pratt, even though, like he's been a 4-year starter, he just is one of those guys kind of flying under the radar a little bit. I know Cam Parker has been doing a lot of tweets that if the Broncos do get him, he's going to start, pulling those out of the archives and saying, "I told you." But so we can goof on Cam because he's not here. But, I wonder what kind of intel Peyton Manning is getting on Michael Pratt, being a Tulane kid who's had that kind of experience as a 4-year starter for the Green Wave down there. He's definitely an interesting prospect, but like Gage said, I think he's going to be one of those guys that may even creep into the second round just based on some of the feedback that you're seeing. Just he's kind of getting a little hot at the right time.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. Jay Bryan, I was just getting ready to ask that question. So if Denver does not fall in love with Bo Nix, JJ McCarthy, or Michael Penix, and they don't go quarterback in the first round, dear Lord, where do we go in the first round if we're not taking a QB?
Position-wise, you have to look at tight end. If Brock Bowers is there, I don't think he will be, but if he is, you have to take him if you're not in love with one of the quarterbacks. Edge rusher, somebody like maybe a Liatu Latu, that could be somebody on the radar. The Denver Broncos need a true number one edge rusher, and then interior D-line as well. That's another area we could look at. They need a number two corner. Maybe if someone like a Kool-Aid McKinstry is sitting there, he could make sense. I'd be totally down for Kool-Aid. And then interior D-line, that's a big one. The Broncos really need somebody who can clog the run fits and be that big impact player up front, because most likely the Broncos are going to cut DJ Jones in a cap-saving measure. Love it. Oh yeah, there'll be some really damn good merch, especially from someone like Brandon Perna if the Broncos draft Kool-Aid McKinstry.
Now I will say this though, every mock draft I've seen has Terry and Arnold, the corner from Alabama, going before Kool-Aid McKinstry, and they have him going at like 16, 17, so he'd still be there at 12.
Okay, so if you have the choice between an Arnold or a McKinstry, I would take an Arnold, but I was operating under the assumption Arnold wasn't going to be there.
Well, yeah, and obviously this is a mock draft. We don't know.
Right.
But man, you know how heated people would be if we went corner instead of quarterback again? Like I love Pat Surtain, and he should never be on another team. But people were hot when we didn't take Justin Fields.
It was still the right pick, though.
Right, yeah.
Yeah. Right. I mean, I still feel like the Broncos at this point realize that they are in a scenario where they have to make a move at quarterback. Sean Payton knows this, and at the end of the day, this is Sean Payton calling the shots. As much as George Payton still has that influence, Sean Payton is going to be making these decisions at the end of the day. And if he feels like he has to make a move to get his quarterback, he will do so.
Clayton Huron always coming in with the smash that like button, share, guys. Absolutely. We would appreciate it. The best way to support the network and every show on it is to hit that like button, hit that little thumbs up. We greatly appreciate it. So all of this kind of depends on if Russell Wilson is still on the Broncos or not. We haven't heard anything on whether he's gone or not. Do we think he's actually gone, or are they going to stick with Russell Wilson another year?
No, he's gone. There's no, that bridge has been burned beyond recognition. There's nothing there anymore. Yes, we should draft Mundungus. I endorse. I don't know. I think you could be a D tackle, be in there and clog those run gaps.
I don't think so. I don't think so.
He's good at clogging.
Wow.
Oh my God.
I did not.
Absolute booty cheeks.
Yeah. All right. So that's basically everything that's been going on over the last week. I do want to dip into the Super Bowl, though. We have the Chiefs versus the 49ers. Obviously, if you are a Broncos fan, you cannot cheer for the Chiefs. No, that is not allowed. And with all of the Broncos connections on the Niners, you have to be cheering for the 49ers. The 49ers are favored, but I'll be honest, the Chiefs scare me a little bit because they're playing better in these playoffs than they have all season. So do we have a 49ers win or do we have a Chiefs win?
Do you want me to give the emotional answer, or do you want me to give my actual evaluators, analyst answer? Well, okay, so emotionally, the 49ers are going to win by 35. But in reality, the way that the Kansas City Chiefs have been playing in these playoffs, the way that they found their identity running the football, and Rashee Rice has really, really broken out as a top target, and Travis Kelce has found the fountain of youth again, and he looks like Travis Kelce again. The Chiefs, if they have that formula going, are virtually unstoppable. They've got a really, really strong defense. That said, though, this 49ers team is stacked and loaded, but they haven't exactly played their best football over the past few weeks. I mean, we think about Green Bay and Detroit. They were lucky to get out of that Green Bay game with a win, and you could argue the only reason why they won against San Francisco is because Detroit self-destructed. So I think that there is some cause for concern about how the 49ers have played in the playoffs, and the way that the Chiefs have played in the playoffs. Right now, I have to go with the hotter hand, and that team is, unfortunately, the Kansas City Chiefs.
And one of the things I did want to bring up before Glenn chimes in is that if you look at the best playoff defenses in the history of the NFL, if the Kansas City Chiefs keep the 49ers under, I think it's 20 points, 17 points, something like that, they will have been the best playoff defense in the NFL since the 2015 Broncos, which would be third on the list all time.
Mm-hmm.
That's how good nuts. They've been playing in the playoffs.
That's nuts.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So I'm with Gage on this. You know, like, obviously I want the Niners to win. There's an inordinate amount of connection there. I mean, you go from the Shanahan, the Lynch, the McCaffrey, the Brian Griese, who, I mean, left the broadcast booth to now being on the coaching staff of a team appearing in the Super Bowl in his first year. Anthony Lynn, you got some Kubiaks in there too. I mean, the list goes on and on. The issue is exactly what Gage just pointed out, is that the one team is playing its best and one team is not. And let's be frank, I mean, the Green Bay Packers and the Detroit Lions are not the Kansas City Chiefs in their prime. And that's the issue. If the Niners allow the Chiefs to get any sort of a lead, they cannot count on being able to bounce back, come back, make this incredible, surge to overtake them. It's just not going to happen. So, I mean, the key to the game for me is the Niners have to put up some points in at least 2 out of their 3 first drives in order to stay in this. Otherwise, it could get ugly real quick.
Now, one of the commandments that the prophet has laid out there is that you never support another AFC West team unless it benefits the Broncos, right?
For sure.
So this is my question. Let's say that the Chiefs win their 3rd Super Bowl. Does Andy Reid and potentially Travis Kelce retire?
I think that it's more possible than the media is giving credit to. I've heard Shefty even talk about it. I think that Andy Reid is probably less likely, but Travis Kelce, I have really heard that he thinks Taylor Swift is the one, man. And there's been some reports out there that he's not exactly extending over the middle to make those catches and potentially risk getting walloped in the process. I think he's a lot more diligent about the beating that his body's taking, and maybe he might feel like, okay, it's time to set my football career aside and focus on my other priorities in life. So I think that if somebody is going to retire between the two of them, it's going to be Travis.
Interesting, because I thought it was going to be Andy Reid.
Andy, I think, could.
Maybe Mahomes. I mean, maybe he'll retire. He's like, I got 3. I'm good. I'm done.
Yeah, I mean, it's Andy feels like he's good with 3, then yeah, but I don't know if he would be able to walk away just like that. I think Andy Reid's one of those guys who's going to be coaching until he's in the grave, man. You think about someone like Tom Moore, who just announced he's going to be back on the Buccaneers staff for like the 46th year of his coaching career. And he's 87 years old or something like that. I think Andy Reid could be a part of the NFL in a similar capacity as Tom Moore until the day he drops dead, basically.
Wow. Uh-oh.
That's my
All right. Anything else that we want to cover before we go? I think we covered everything.
Well, what's your prediction for the game?
Oh, I'm straight up 49ers, like 31-28.
Nice.
So I did. Let me throw this out because I did hear a prop bet. That's one of the best prop bets I've heard in a Super Bowl in a long time. First jersey number of the first player to score a touchdown. Over under 22.5.
I think I'm going to go with over because Travis.
Yeah. But under, you got Ayuk, you got Deebo Samuel, you got Pacheco, you've got the
Christian McCaffrey.
No, McCaffrey's 23.
Oh, wait, is it? What was the over under again?
21,
basically.
No, it's 22.5 So
then McCaffrey would be under. He'd be 22.
He's 23. He
is. Oh, that's right. He's 23. I still associate him with his 22 from Carolina.
That's a great bet.
Ooh, but like you got Travis Kelce and Christian McCaffrey, who would be the over.
Well, and you got Mahomes. You got Mahomes at 15, and you never know if he's going to run it in or not.
True.
Pacheco or lower. Tough. Yeah, that's a good one. Anyway.
I might have to put some money on that. That's a good prop.
You notice how none of us said anything about Chiefs receivers? Just Kelce, Mahomes, and then everybody on offense on the Niners.
So you're going to go under for Tony?
Imagine if Kadarius Toney has another like breakout Super Bowl after the season that he's had. That would just be the laugher of the entire Super Bowl right there. I
wonder if he'll even play after he suggested that the team was lying about his injury status.
I mean, I wouldn't play him. If it were me, Kadarius Toney would not be on my team.
Mm-hmm. After that, cut a long time ago.
Yeah, he would have been cut after the Bills game for me, like dead serious.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, that whole video of like I think it was the Jets player trying to get into the building, putting his code in and it wouldn't open.
Yep.
Tony just walks up. What the hell? No.
That's like me going on StreamYard most Tuesday nights. I'm like, is this gonna work? Or
me too, and I run the damn thing. Anything else we need to cover before we go?
No, we're good.
I think we're good, man.
All right. Well, we appreciate every single person that joined us in the chat.
Yeah, thank you.
It was a longer show than I thought it was going to be. Like, honestly, it was like 6 minutes and we're done. Like, there's nothing. But hail the power of Twitter X, Twitter X, whatever it's called now, X Twitter. We were able to get some topics in for the day.
And we had a nice lively chat as always. We always appreciate our chat interacting with us, man. It makes for a more lively show. We thank David, we thank Mohammed, we thank John, and everybody else who liked, commented, subscribed to the channel. Those are the best ways that you can help us out, free and easy, and supports us more than we can even state.
Yep.
And also, if you can follow us on TikTok, we'd appreciate it. We're well on our way to be able to broadcast live on that as well on a weekly basis. So,
that would be dirty.
Yeah, there you go.
Mundungus, try to stay out of trouble. But make sure you check out all the other shows on the network. We have shows Tuesday, Wednesday, Thursday, Friday. I'm talking to Bill about doing a Super Bowl neighborhood, so we'll see if that happens. I don't know if it will or not. So make sure you check that out. But again, the best way to support the network, support any show on the network, is just to hit that thumbs up. You hit that thumbs up, we would greatly appreciate it. We'll see you guys later. We love the Broncos. We love Broncos country. Peace.
Fast lane when I pass in the street. Bag of money in the passenger seat. Simcoe's been asking for me on the road from the west to the east. Way up, I might never come down, cause the coast's racking up the